You know, I recently turned 50 years old, and Tom Cruise is one of the very few actors that I can confidently say I've literally been watching him my whole life. I can actually remember in the 1980s my mom having a crush on him, along with some other dreamboats, Kevin Costner, John Bon Jovi. Hey, don't judge, okay? My mom has a type, okay? But like most things, I owe the gratitude to my parents, in this case, for exposing me to those Tom Cruise movies at a young age. This is not hyperbole, but I literally cannot remember a time when that dude was not in my movie-loving life, period. Now, his action star persona is pretty substantiated at this point, but the dude has never stopped making interesting choices. From his slapstick comedic stuff to his more romantic side, even musicals, obviously the dramatic roles. He always keeps the audience on their toes, even when they think they have him figured out. He's always charming, daring, and definitely committed. But here's the thing, 4 decades of acting. He does have 3 competitive acting nominations with the Oscars, but 0 wins. I know that he got an honorary Oscar last year in 25, but between me and you, that really added fuel to the fire, because with that recent trailer release for his upcoming film Digger, I think there's a real chance that he could be getting another statue. And this time the Academy won't need any honorary guardrails to hand out possibly the most overdue Oscar in its nearly 100-year history. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the garage. Gerald here with you, of course. As if you didn't already know, we are talking about Mr. Tom Cruise today. A few days ago, I did a trailer reaction for the film Digger that's going to be coming out in October, and it's expected to be a big Oscars play for Cruise. It's been a while since he received a nomination from the Academy, even though he did get that honorary Oscar that I mentioned last year. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to lay out 10 of my favorite Cruise performances, but they are performances that I also think could have been nominated for an Academy Award, and in some cases maybe they were, and they could have or should have won the Oscar. Now, there are other performances of his that I really like. For example, one of maybe my number 1, but definitely my top 3, is his Les Grossman from Tropic Thunder. A out-of-body comedic almost cameo that he literally stole the movie with 2 or 3 minutes of screen time, and he was unrecognizable in that role, especially at that point in his career. But that type of performance would not make this top 10, because obviously that wasn't an awards play and nobody was going to nominate him for a prestigious award for that, even though honestly he probably deserved it. Before we get into my top 10, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's free to do that. My subscriptions have flatlined. I work so hard on these videos, man, it's a lot. So subscribing would mean the world to me. And if you are really into it and you find yourself coming to my channel frequently, you can click join down below and read all about channel memberships for as little as $2 a month. You could really help me keep things going out here, even when it's not award season. And I do want to give a special thanks to all of my current members. You guys mean the world to me. Let's get into today's ranking of my 10 favorite Cruise performances that should have been at the Oscars. Getting us started at number 10 is Eyes Wide Shut, which was Stanley Kubrick's final film. Cruise plays Dr. Bill Hartford, a guy who spends the whole movie wandering through his own jealousy, and he finds a lot more than he bargained for. This is Cruise, in my opinion, handing himself completely over to the director. Kubrick famously shot this thing, and it took forever. Take after take after take. But you can feel Cruise let go of his movie star armor, and he just exists in it. He's just there for the vision. He's uneasy the entire film, but I think that's the point. Now, the Academy gave this film 0 nominations. Nothing. Kubrick died 4 months before it came out, and they didn't even notice that Cruise was quietly doing some of the strangest, most vulnerable work of his entire career. It's a slow burn, it's not for everyone, but he is absolutely fearless in it. At number 9 is a pretty recent one that almost put him back into that Oscar 5, and it would have been for an action movie. Yeah, I'm talking about Top Gun Maverick. I hear you, this is an action sequel, but watch what Cruise actually does here as this legacy character in this very famous franchise. What I mean by that is Maverick is a man who has outlived his own era, and he knows it. You know, the scene with, rest in peace, Val Kilmer wrecks me every time, especially in the wake of his passing. There's no stunts there. There's no action. It's just these 2 dudes, these 2 actors that have been in my life for 35 to 40 years. And Cruise plays it like he means it. Like it's a true, actual send-off for that friendship, for that character, for that person. Now, here's the kicker. It's kind of weird. He did get an Oscar nomination for this, but it was as producer because, of course, it received a Best Picture nomination. The Academy nominated the film, but they opted to skip the performance. And that's kind of the whole story that you're going to see laid out in this video in one sentence, because a lot of these films did get their love, but Cruise was just kind of sitting in the shadows. It's weird. At number 8, I'm going to put Steven Spielberg's Minority Report. This is probably my favorite collaboration between Spielberg and Cruise, of which there are many. He plays John Anderton as this cop who's chasing crimes before they happen. You know, it's like a sci-fi futuristic story. He's also a grieving father buried inside this blockbuster, and he never lets you forget that grief. The whole movie moves because he's moving. He's carrying his loss and kind of wayward persona the entire time. Sci-fi rarely gets the Academy's attention unless it's dressed up as something like more serious. And this got read as, you know, just summer Spielberg, and it was a thrill ride. Nothing more than that. They probably thought it was just Cruise running for 2 hours in the summer, right? But somehow the most memorable stuff is the quiet, wrecked look on his face when he watches old home videos of his son. That's acting, but nobody nominated it. And number 7 is The Color of Money, from another legendary filmmaker that Cruise has worked with, of course, Martin Scorsese. This is young Cruise. You know, he's going toe-to-toe with a legend, Paul Newman, right? He plays Vincent, who's a cocky pool hustler. He's more talent than common sense. And he's going against Paul Newman's iconic character, Fast Eddie, as this is somewhat of a spiritual sequel. You know, Cruise is all swagger, right? He's all like noise, spinning his cue like a maniac. But that's exactly his role. He's the live wire Newman's character needed to make him feel alive. Here's the awards history that you might love. Newman won Best Actor for this. His first competitive Oscar after 6 losses, and the honorary the year before. This was the Academy basically fixing a bunch of their past mistakes for this legendary Hollywood icon, Paul Newman. And standing right next to him, feeding him every bit of that energy, was 24-year-old basically newcomer Tom Cruise. Scorsese pulled a real performance out of him early, and for my money, it still holds up. But the irony in that Newman story, and when he did get his competitive Oscar, could be a big deal for Tom getting it last year and then possibly showing up this year for Digger. Could be the same thing all over again. My number 6 is one of his nominated performances. Of course, Jerry Maguire. This is the one that everybody quotes, but nobody really credits enough. Show me the money. You know, sure, I get it. But go watch the actual movie, because Cruise plays a sport agent who has a bit of a breakdown, and his conscience, you know, spends the rest of the film trying to rebuild himself into an actual human being. He is charming. He's cracking. He's desperate. Sometimes all in the same scene, to be honest. He lost that year to Jeffrey Rush for Shine, and here's the twist of the knife. Cuba Gooding Jr. won supporting actor for this same movie. He was in almost every scene with Cruise. You know, Jerry is the engine of the whole thing, the titular character. The Academy handed out the trophy to the guy standing next to him the whole time. It was a great Cuba Gooding performance, but I had given Cruise a real shot at the win that year. At number 5 is Michael Mann's Collateral. You don't see Cruise in a villain role too often, but this is a great villainous performance. You know, silver hair, gray suit, dead eyes. Vincent, who's this contract killer, you know, he hijacks a cab driver in LA one night, and Michael Mann got him to play the coolest villain imaginable. He's terrifying because he's reasonable. You know, he talks to you about hitting your marks like he's giving you a lecture or being a mentor. You know, this is Cruise like flipping his entire movie star persona inside out. But the Academy looked away. But get this, Jamie Foxx got a supporting actor nomination for playing the cab driver. The guy Cruise is acting against again got nominated, while Cruise is doing his scariest, most against type or unsavory work of his career at that point, and he got nothing. It's just a snub. I still think of it as a snub. At number 4 is one of my personal favorites, Oscars aside, and that is Rain Man. You know, this is the performance of Cruise that nobody really talks about, but everybody remembers. Dustin Hoffman won Best Actor. He was in lead that year, playing Raymond. And he is incredible, and I'm glad he won. But this movie does not work without Tom Cruise. playing Charlie, a selfish hustler, again, who slowly, almost painfully, becomes a brother. We see it happen in real time. You know, Hoffman did get the showy role here, but Cruise has to do all the changing. Rain Man won Best Picture. Hoffman got his Oscar. And the guy carrying essentially the emotional arc of the entire film and who actually transforms walked away with nothing. That's the hardest kind of acting to notice because it's built to make the other guy look great. Cruise did it at just 26 years old here. He made it look easy. That's why it got missed. And number 3 is Oliver Stone's Born on the 4th of July from '89. This is the one where Cruise decided to prove he was more than just a charming smile. He played a Vietnam vet who comes home paralyzed and furious and has to rebuild an entire life and belief system from the ground up. Cruise goes to some genuinely dark places here. Rage, despair, physical toll, and he committed to all of it. Now, he did get a Best Actor nomination for it this year, and it's hard to really be upset because he lost to Daniel Day-Lewis for a movie called My Left Foot. A lot of people would argue DDL might be the greatest living actor, and he was right at the beginning of that narrative with that film. And I would say Daniel Day-Lewis was probably untouchable and might be the next time he shows up as well. So I get it, but it's just a shame from a timing standpoint because I think Cruise took the biggest swings of his career, at least to date, in this movie, and it mostly landed. And by the way, Oliver Stone did get nominated and win Best Director for this, but if Daniel Day-Lewis is not in that lineup, we might be telling a very different story about Cruise's career, and I might not even be making this video. Even though this one is not at number 1, this is my personal favorite Tom Cruise performance and possibly film. The reason it's not number 1 is because I don't think it stood the best chance to win the Oscar. You'll find out what that is in a moment, but I'm talking about Rob Reiner's A Few Good Men from 1992. I think to myself that some of you might even think this is a controversial placement as my runner-up because, of course, he didn't even get nominated for this. The film was widely praised, and it might be Rob Reiner's best film also. But hear me out on this. Everybody remembers You Can't Handle the Truth, right? Nicholson. And by the way, Jack got a supporting actor nomination, but the entire movie rests on Tom Cruise. He plays Caffey, who is this like lethargic Navy lawyer who would rather, settle everything outside of court so that he can make his 5 p.m. baseball game. And the whole film is about him growing a spine in real time in front of us. That courtroom sequence that's so famous, one of the greatest ever filmed, honestly, only works because Cruise built the entire movie to earn it. He worked for that scene, for Caffey. Nicholson gets 4 scenes, including the courtroom, a couple great lines that honestly are unforgettable and deserved of everything he got as well. But, Cruise carried the 2 hours for me. The Academy really overlooked him here. Even if it would not have won, he should have been nominated. Go back and watch his acting in that courtroom sequence, which by the way, was against Jack Nicholson in 1992. So it's not like Cruise had been around for multiple decades at that point. All right, at my number 1, if you've been following Cruise's career, you know he should have won supporting actor for this. It is Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia. WTF, Academy. If you ask me, this is the best acting, the craft of acting that Tom Cruise has ever done. And it's not really close. He plays like this seduction guru. He's all bravado, right? He's spitting the most vile stuff that you've ever heard into a microphone. And then the movie kind of peels him open as a character, right? Credit to PTA for that, of course. But the interview scene where the whole act collapses, and then later on when he's at his dying father's bedside, those 2 scenes, I'm just talking about those 2, is the best work that anybody did that entire decade, acting-wise. Because his character starts out as like this monster, really disingenuous and unsavory. But he ends up as this kind of broken, sad little boy, and you watch it happen through his performance. Now, he got a nomination for this for supporting actor, but he lost to Michael Caine, who is a legend, for a movie called The Cider House Rules. But between me and you, I love Michael Caine, but that still bugs the shit out of me, if you couldn't tell in my tone at the start of this entry. This is the performance, above all else, that's almost subjective to where you say he should have a fucking Oscar for that, especially if you're looking at the time and the era that came out. But instead, he's still here waiting, doing a bunch of weird shit in Digger to maybe get him back to the party. Well, that's it, guys. Those are the 10 performances that Tom Cruise has given in his career that I think either should have received an Oscar nomination or in some cases a win. Most notably, Magnolia should have been his winning Oscar. I also think if Daniel Day-Lewis had not performed My Left Foot in the same year, he could have very easily had one for Born on the 4th of July also. Is he going to receive one this year for Digger, the new Alejandro Iñárritu film that looks fucking bonkers? One thing is absolutely certain, I can't wait for it. It looks like Dr. Strangelove meets Les Grossman from Tropic Thunder. Maybe this is the Les Grossman sequel that I heard them, or spinoff that I heard them talking about several years ago. I don't know. I'm here for it no matter what. Let me know down below what you think. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and check out channel memberships by clicking join down below if you are into it. I will see you out here very, very soon in the garage.